Oh, let me do this thing. Boop, 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 boop. Make myself full screen till we're playing the movies. Yeah. Hey, everybody. We're live again. It's my kid's first day of second grade, so that's an interesting thing. I have a feeling if every school is like my kid's school, there is looming conflict between the parents regarding their respective health precautions. Because there seemed to be a wide amount of disagreement out there in that parking lot. That is my observation during drop-off time. What else is going on? Geez, it's Friday. We made it to the end of this interoceptive week, and we'll finish talking about Introception today. Not that we will have completed discussing it, but we will be moving on to our next topic at the end of this week. So we'll have one last day of it, and hopefully everyone kind of carries forward the lessons and the practices we've learned. On my end, had my first day with Solomon back in the mix yesterday. I was extremely grateful for that. Unfortunately, we did not get nearly as much done as I'd hoped. I am hoping to bring on a replacement of some sort within the next 10 days for him, and hopefully we'll get things unclogged and get shipments moving. I'm trying not to list or drop a lot of stuff right now. At the same time, cash flow. So we're doing what we can to kind of take a balanced approach and not overstress things. Write checks our ass can't cash too quick. But that said, it was really good to have him here yesterday, have his mind in the mix. I'm going to go down there today and help him with his side project once we wrap up here. So with that said, let's see who's in, who's here, who's not here. We got a viewer already, somebody on Twitch. I don't know who it is. Probably one of the reggies. Oh, I got a few. I got Academy Impossible, another TV viewer, and Buvit. Is it Buvit? B-U-Vit? Buvit? Like I'm above it? David Chen, thank you for the like, sir. I guess we got David Chen tuned in as well. So today we are going, as I said, Misery Pimp, good morning. Well, everyone's just turning up. That's awesome. I don't know why I even bother looking at the list. It's like I don't know that people are going to show up, but I should be confident at this point. You guys are coming. As long as I show up and I bring my A game, I know you guys will be here to appreciate it and receive it and stimulate more. So today's talk, we're just on this topic of the heart and how the heart gates. So the last 2 or 3 sessions, we looked at a very, very technical discussion, a scientific discussion. Snow off the bluff. Good morning, sir. Welcome. Of how the heart and the baroreceptors of the heart directly interface with part of the brain, and a very technical, almost medical discussion of heart-brain interfacing. So those are awesome, and I think they're really important because if we just watch the kind of woo, oh yeah, your heart controls your mind, we don't really know anything about anything. So I personally like to bring those technical things in. And that said, I think that we can lose a lot of the important detail and ramifications when we're just focused on the technical. So that leads me to today's video, which is a TED Talk again, engaging the intelligence of the heart, right? So I presume we're on the same thing, and it is connected with heart math. We were looking at some of the heart math talks. So we'll get into this. As always, it's a TED Talk, which means I must interrupt it throughout. Not just to give my 2 cents from the cheap seats over here, but so that YouTube and Facebook don't think that I'm just playing someone else's content. I am making commentary on it. That's the important thing. And this is the first week, by the way, since I've been very assiduous about doing that with every video we've seen this week. This is the first week I haven't had anything pulled from YouTube. So I think we have a winning formula here. So with that said, TEDx Santa Cruz, Howard Martin on engaging the intelligence of the heart. It says here, Howard Martin is one of the original leaders who helped Doc Childre found HeartMath. In 1999, he co-authored the HeartMath solution, published by Harper San Francisco, and he has been with HeartMath's worldwide training and consulting team since its inception in 1991. In 2000, he authored the HeartMath Method, an audio learning program published by Nightingale Conant. He is also the producer of 2 award-winning musical recordings, including Doc Childre's Heart Zones, which spent 50 consecutive weeks on Billboard magazine's music. I don't know why people put this stuff in their bios. Can I be honest? You're just telling me that you're a capitalist who has had some marketing successes. This speaks nothing to how many people you've helped or how many lives you've touched. And I realize that these are the things that we mark success by now, but frankly, it doesn't help me think that this is any more or less credible, right? If you say that, oh, well, Nike has sold millions and millions of shoes, it doesn't mean that Nike makes the best shoe. It just means that they make a cheap shoe and have good marketing. Whatever. Me being cynical is not going to help. Let's check out, hey, TDL Actual. Thanks for the follow. Greatly appreciated. That's a new name on the list, and I always appreciate seeing newcomers. Welcome, welcome. I don't even see you in my my users list right now, so thank you for doing that without even a shout out. Greatly appreciated. So we're gonna queue up the video. As I said, I'm gonna have to interject periodically to keep YouTube from flagging me. So we'll see what he says, and we'll see what I say in response.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome. It's all
right, I got to cut him off right there. That wasn't a warm. No, I'm just kidding.
honor and a privilege to be here in my home community, talking about the thing that means most to me, which is my heart. And this journey goes back a long way for me now, over 40 years. I started when I was 3, but a long time now. And it started with a couple of realizations. When I was a young man, I realized that life for me had to be about continuous growth. That was what was most important. That seemed to be what life was about, what everything around me was trying to do, whether they were conscious of it or not. And I also realized that life had to be about service to others. That whatever you gained, you needed to find a way to give it. It was an incomplete feeling or incomplete circuit if you didn't give back something from what you gained in your life. And that process led me to a discovery of heart and an exploration of heart, which has been my life's work. But enough about me, except one more thing I should tell you, and that is that I've lived here proudly in Boulder Creek now for 21 years, but I'm originally from the South. So I think it's an important time to be alive. We've reached a critical juncture where humanity is making choices, where there's a revolution unfolding socially, spiritually.
Oh man, this guy could not have known how this would play 10 years later. But yeah, here we go.
Consciously, all kinds of different ways it's happening. And this year, this very year that we're in right now, is a very important choice point year. We're making decisions today that are going to affect our future for a very long time. Those choices will affect our individual lives, our own fulfillment, and then the future of many, many things in the world. And I think that's what a conference like today is all about. It's people coming together to share new ideas, to help us all make the choices that we need to make. In the context of these changing times, we face challenges. But
all right, I realize that I'm distracting from the point, but again, I don't want YouTube to kick me off. You guys think that's his real hair, or is that a hairpiece? I can't always tell.
We also are finding solutions. And one of the things that's emerging in the middle of all this is an intelligence we've had for a long time, that we access with some consistency, but usually not with regularity, something we've all heard about, something we all revere when we really make contact with it, and it is the intelligence of the heart itself.
Because you can see his hair is a lot darker than his beard, which is mostly true for me too, so again, who am I to judge? But just the length and texture seem different.
And heart math is a lot of things, but if I look at it simplistically and say, what are we really doing there? We're really exploring and discovering new things and then passing on information about the intelligence of the heart. And when I speak about the intelligence of the heart, I'm talking about this aspect of us we have inside that goes right down to the physical heart, where we now know new things about our physical heart we've never known before. And I'll share some of those things in just a minute. But beyond the physical heart, we have a lot more going on in regards to what heart really is. It is a source of wisdom and intelligence within us. It's high speed, it's intuitive, it's discriminating.
All right, not making jokes here, but it's interesting that so much of the research we've been looking at earlier this week has come out since this talk, right? This talk is almost 10 years old, 9 years and 4 months old since it was uploaded, so the talk could very well be 10 years old. And so much of the research we've heard about how the heart literally is discriminates between threat and non-threat and things like that. That's all come out since he gave this talk. So it's fascinating to me.
Fascinating. It's that place where our authentic self, our really core of ourself, emerges from. It's the birthplace of emotions that we revere the most in our lives. Love, care, compassion, appreciation. Those kind of emotions long, long ago associated with this word heart. As I said earlier, when we access this part of ourselves, it gives us greater discrimination over things, a new ability to see into ourselves, our world, and to others. It is that place we access when we are able to do what we usually can't. It's really our own source of self-security, the place we go to when we need to find answers to things. It's where the hero within is born from. And what I like to think about heart, as I've gone through my life trying to discover more about it, is it really is my own best friend and my most reliable guide to making decisions big and small. To this point, I've been talking, I guess you could call it, philosophically inspirational about heart. And you've heard these things before. At HeartMath, we've done lots of scientific research to look at heart in a different way and to unfold a new understanding of heart that gives us more respect in it. And to do that, we've used science. We've discovered a lot of things about heart. The heart is, in fact, a lot more than a blood pump. It sends powerful commands to the brain and to the rest of the body. It does it in 4 ways. There's a neurological communication, which Doug mentioned. Heart has its own very complex...
I believe that the Doug he's talking about is the Doug that we saw talking actually yesterday, but also on Monday.
Nervous system, sending information to the brain and the head. Brain sends information down to the heart sends information back to the brain, conversation happening all the time. When researchers map out the neurological traffic in our bodies, they clearly see that the heart is sending a lot more information to the brain than it ever gets. If you placed your finger on your wrist, you would feel your pulse. That's a wave of energy created by the squeezing of the heart, pushing the blood through the veins and arteries. It's called a blood pressure wave. It travels through the entire body and influences everything, including brain function. In 1983, something most people don't know, the heart was actually reclassified as part of our hormonal system because it produces several very important hormones.
I guess I knew that the heart produces a hormone under stress, and they test for that when you go to the hospital if you think you're having a heart attack, because definitely Virgo done that. But I didn't realize that under healthy conditions the heart produced hormones. This is actually very new to me.
One is called atrial peptide. One of its jobs is to reduce the release of a stress hormone called cortisol. I found that fascinating. The heart's producing a hormone to back off a stress hormone. I find that's interesting. Lastly, where it gets actually most interesting to me is the electrical heart. The heart is...
This is the chart. You guys have seen this graphic. You guys have seen me trying to find this graphic or represent this. He's about to break it all down for us. Yes.
It's an electrical organ. It produces by far the strongest source of bioelectricity in our bodies, up to 40 to 60 times stronger than the second most powerful source, which is our brain. This electrical energy permeates every single cell in our bodies and is so strong it radiates beyond the skin out into space. It surrounds us in 360 degrees and can be measured 3 to 4 feet outside the body. This electromagnetic energy in this field changes depending upon our emotional state. This is where it gets really intriguing. If we're experiencing strong negative emotions like anger, frustration, resentment, all those things we can often feel, it produces an incoherent spectra in this electromagnetic field. Conversely, if we begin to experience emotions, the same ones I mentioned before, long metaphorically associated with heart, love, care, compassion, kindness, appreciation, tolerance, patience, non-judgment, those kind of things, it produces a coherent spectra in the field. And we are broadcasting this electromagnetic energy to every single cell in our own bodies and then communicating it outwards into space.
And I don't know if he's going here, but this is very much when you are around someone and their vibe just feels crazy, like skittish, and you feel that you are standing in their electromagnetic field if you're within 4 feet of them. Likewise, when you're with someone and you just feel comforted, that's the coherence of their electromagnetic field. I'm not saying that's solely responsible, but you're certainly subject to it. I also think it's interesting how since the last year and a half and social distancing, how we typically are having a lot less field interaction with other people. And that's something, as soon as they gave the social distancing guidelines, because he says 3-4 feet, the longest estimate I've heard of a human electromagnetic bioelectric field is 6 feet. That's a 6-foot shell around you. And so, or 6 feet in any direction from your body. So as soon as they kind of started talking about social distancing and the social distancing regulations, one of my first thoughts was, I wonder what it's going to be like with people being less engaged with one another's electromagnetic fields, especially when they can't even see their faces. Like, we know of each other's presence through certain unconscious things, and that very much did away with two of the big ones.
Face. So there's an electromagnetic or communication always going on. So now we move in understanding heart beyond biology into physics. How does my field relate to your field? How do your collective fields together relate? How does the field in this room right now, from the accumulation of association with each other and all the great speakers, how does that field relate to the fields of the earth itself? And these are the new things that we're exploring in heart math today. We can measure some of this by looking at what's called our heart rhythms. The medical term is heart rate variability analysis. Didn't I say that good? I'm almost turning into a Californian. Heart rate variability analysis. What that means is our heart rhythms. It's different than heart rate. Timing between heartbeats changes between every single heartbeat, and as you map this out, very complex patterns emerge that show you a lot about what's going on in the body, about our physical health, and about the quality of heart-brain communication. In the top view, you see 200 seconds of data across the horizontal axis. You see beats per minute on the vertical axis. In the top view, we have someone in HeartMath Research Labs experiencing the...
Why didn't they have this guy give the talk that we've been watching for the past 3 days? He's showing the exact same information, just a lot more excitingly.
Feeling of frustration. What happens is their heart rhythm patterns become very jagged and irregular, all over the place. It's not good for our physical health, and it actually sends signals to the brain that begin to shut down the higher perceptual centers in our brain. It's called cortical inhibition. The bottom view is the same person. A few minutes later, what have they done? They've shifted from feeling frustration to feeling a heart-related emotion, appreciation. Now you see the smooth sine wave-like pattern. This is what high performance looks like. This is what high-quality communication between heart and brain looks like, is when you see that sine wave.
And this is why, appreciation was what the emotion that caused that signal. So now you may consider, knowing this, why do we focus so much on gratitude? Why do we focus so much on, when people talk about that sort of, it may be, and I will postulate now, that mentalism, right? This idea of using your mind to control your reality is actually cardiacism, I don't know, whatever, cardiac instead of mental, ism, cardiacity, I don't know. I'm all over the place here. But so I think it seems plausible that the idea that you're manifesting things with your mind is actually you setting yourself to a certain state in your heart. And that what he said there, appreciation, gratitude, the feeling of gratitude that we emphasize so much when it comes to manifestation. That feeling of gratitude that we emphasize in prayer, that we emphasize here every day, actually improves your heart rate variability. I don't remember the other word. Your heart rhythm.
Like pattern. This is really good for our health, and it sends a signal to the brain that opens the brain up. It activates higher perceptual centers in the brain. It's
literally higher perceptual centers in the brain.
Called cortical facilitation. We have access to our higher thinking capacity, and that's where we solve our problems, isn't it? All this relates to changes going on in heart, not just in brain. So the old term that we've all heard, a change of heart changes everything, takes on new understanding. Now, once we discovered all this, we developed technology, software that can measure changes in our heart rhythms, display those changes, and then determine the quality of them by using what's called a measurement of coherence, divided into low, medium, and high. And right now, I'm going to demonstrate that for you in real time and show you how powerful this really is.
Cool.
So I have a willing volunteer that I met backstage just a few minutes ago, a very brave young woman named Allie, who's agreed to come out here. Allie, if you would join me on stage. There she is. You knew I'd have to pick a pretty one, didn't you? Okay, have a seat, dear. I will attach this sensor to Allie's ear. It's just a sensor that's going to plug into. Would you please take your earring off? I have a collection of these. Attach this to your ear, please, to your earlobe. This is just plugging into the USB port of the computer. If you guys could make sure we're switched over now to the computer on stage. What I'm going to do is start this, and it's going to, first of all, make sure Allie's got a good pulse. You'll see that come up at the bottom pretty soon.
Yo, is he like seriously creepy serial killer adding her earring to his collection? Is that what's going on here? It kind of could be that.
You're going to see Allie's heart rhythms happening at the top of the screen in real time. This is what her heart rhythms look like right now. Now, she's up here on stage in front of a whole lot of people. I've already let you know that these heart rhythms reflect internal emotional states, so I'm sure there's no reason for her to be nervous. As you can see, there are changes occurring in real time as we do this. Now, one thing that I'd like to know from you, Allie, and it's the only real question I'm going to ask you is, are you any good at singing? Can you sing?
No.
Really? Why not? Well,
Don't have good pitch.
okay, well, I'm not going to make you sing then. Here's what I would like you to do. I'm going to make sure I got this adjusted right. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to focus your attention right in the center of your chest, right in the area of the heart. And now I want you to breathe naturally and normally. You're okay, I'll let you know what's going on. Breathe naturally and normally, but just a little bit deeper than you normally would. Nice deep breaths. And as you do, I want you to pretend as if the breath is flowing in and out right through the center of your chest. This is called heart-focused breathing. And by the way, you're doing just fine, dear. Now I want you to stay with that heart-focused breathing. And now I want you to feel a positive emotion. Maybe it's the love or care you have for someone or something in your life. Don't try too hard. Just make it an easy does it process and make sure you got the breathing going on at the same time. And feel a positive emotion. Love or care you have for someone or something in your life.
That is phenomenally. I mean, look at the difference there. That's crazy. And let's see where it goes as she keeps it going.
I'm going to stop this now. First of all, we all owe Allie a round of applause.
Look at that, guys.
Thank you, Steve. You didn't so bad, was it? Yeah, you did great.
Oh, we gave her the earring back. Good, good, good. No creepy
Now,
serial
what we see
killer.
here is on the, if you see on the where she started on
He didn't creepy serial killer her. That's good.
the left-hand side, you can see that's her heart rhythm. She's up here, she's a bit nervous, and then right in here somewhere is where I started picking on her about singing and stuff. You can see that pattern. Remember the pattern I showed you in the other slide where the person was in a state of frustration, which you were not, but this is a hard thing to do. Then she began to do a simple technique where she began to access the intelligence of her heart. Heart focus, heart focused breathing, and heart feeling. You can see the smooth sine wave-like pattern beginning to emerge. She did a great job being up here for the first time in front of all of you folks. And that shows you the power that you all have inside, that I have inside, to make these changes and then create different effect in the brain by changing what you do in your heart. Thank you so much. We took it another level, and now what we're doing at Heart Math through the Global Coherence Initiative is we are trying to engender and then measure global coherence.
Maybe
What we found is that there's an evidence of a
maybe measure it first.
global effect when a large number of people create similar outgoing emotional waves, whether stressful and incoherent or positive and coherent. There's a global effect when a large number of people are experiencing something similar emotion.
Whoa. All right, so this is a whole other interesting thing that bears looking at, because there's a question of causality here, but the correlation is on point here. There is this, we've looked at it before. It seems that there is a break in randomness that precedes or corresponds like exactly with big events. I forget the name of it. You guys who've been with us for 100 plus episodes now know exactly what I'm talking about. We looked at it together. But basically, there's all these random number generators all around the world. And every once in a while, they all randomly have the exact same giant number on them at the same time. It's not very common. And it happens with a bizarre increase in frequency, like right before the plane hit on 9/11 and on these crazy weird times. Let me see if I can find... It's called Global Random Number... Is it Global Conscious Random Number Generator? Global Consciousness Project. So it's at Princeton. It's not like a bullshit thing. Here, so they'll show... Here's George Floyd and BLM. So let's see what these show. What are we saying here? Okay, so as things change, they're showing the hours elapsed, I don't know what this vertical axis is. I don't know. I unfortunately can't read these graphs. But I do know that's actually more than I usually see on here. But I guess today's a big day. Yeah, they've updated this a lot. Let's see. This is history, but it doesn't really explain what's happening here. Oh, weird. Okay, so this shows... The red line shows the amount of sort of non-randomness. That's a lot of non-randomness. And I mean, non-randomness is a big thing for me. Like seeing triple numbers, quadruple numbers, quintuple numbers, all that to me is connected to non-randomness. So this is the real-time display with a 20-minute delay. I don't know what any of this stuff means. Cumulative, yeah. Kind of off topic here. Point being, what he's talking about, that emotional reaction, seems to be very much cued to these... Wow, what is this? GCP network variance. So, this is interesting to show. Wow. That's really dramatic. It's interesting to look at how even random number generators seem to be coordinated with these events that this guy's talking about, which are emotional events, which are intentional. These are not random.
When there's a natural disaster or some kind of very bad news, don't you kind of feel that in the air? Don't you sense a ripple of energy that's going around the world as people begin to pick up on it through the news and that sort of thing? Well, that we're finding is true. There's a global effect depending upon what humanity is feeling emotionally. We have a hypothesis that strong collective emotional intention has a measurable impact on the Earth's geomagnetic field and ionosphere. These are protective layers around the Earth. They're part of the Earth as a living system. They protect us from incoming solar radiation, cosmic rays, solar flares, and things like that, and they are part of the Earth. What we believe is that mass human emotion interacts with these fields. There's a lot of research that's already been done showing that these fields affect us. Changes in health, changes in social behavior, a lot of things are being tracked now to changes in the Earth's energetic fields.
This is like what we were looking at yesterday with the solar flare activity, because that would affect the Earth's energetic fields. Oops.
If they're affecting us, our belief is we're affecting them. And to begin to look at this and to see if this is true, and see if this hypothesis is real, we've started the Global Coherence Initiative, and part of that is we are installing sensor sites around the world, very sophisticated sensors that measure subtle changes in the Earth's energetic fields. We have a sensor in the Santa Cruz Mountains. We have one in Saudi Arabia. We have one in the United Kingdom. We will have one in New York State this month, and then next fall we have one going in New Zealand. Ultimately, we will need 12. What we're doing is experimentation around looking at changes that go on in these fields and trying to correlate those with changes that are occurring in society, changes that are occurring in the overall emotional state of humanity itself. If this works, we will have proved that all of our thoughts, our feelings, our prayers, our intentions, all of that is more real than we ever believed before. And thank you. we're kind of listening in for the first time to the brain waves and heart rhythms of our planet. And what we want to do with this is not just to prove scientifically that these things exist, but to bring people together, to use the power of our hearts, the power of our love, our care, our appreciation, and our energetic intention to create positive changes in our world and facilitate this new wave of revolutionary thinking and revolutionary living that we're on the threshold of. Thank you so much, and take care.
So we got a couple interesting connections here. I think we have time for one more TED Talk here. We'll keep heart-centered. This is like where we're at this week. Desiree, you were feeling me on that, right? Like, it definitely seemed like he was being a total creep, and being like, "Yes, I will take your earring," and like he called her, he's called her pretty or whatever, and then he like touched her hand and all that. I didn't like any of that body language. She obviously didn't like it either, because afterwards she stood up and her arms were like this. Should we do a week on body language? Do you guys? I don't know. It's one of those things that when you learn it, you take it for granted. But we could do a week on reading body language. Let's go.
Når jeg har sittet hjemme i senga mi i Norge og hørt om alle som har det vondt, og du ser det på nyhetene, og du hører om ting, så har jeg tenkt at det finnes mye mennesker som
I presume this will be in English because this is subtitled right now, and this is a girl crying on video. I don't know if you guys can read the subtitles. It's the only reason I paused it and broke that emotional tone.
blir født, og så har de en oppgave i livet, og så dør de. Og that's it.
This was the first scene of the first episode of Aftenposten's critically acclaimed, award-winning international success Sweatshop. The plot is simple enough. We wanted to take 3...
Okay, this is not about what I thought it was about. I just read the description. I'm here live with you guys. I mean, it makes an interesting point nonetheless. It's that appealing to the emotions bypasses the brain. And I mean, we can get into a whole lot of how the human works type stuff, but I do want to focus on what the heck? Come on. I do want to focus on heart interoception one more time. Ooh, this one looks really good. Okay. I'm going to do this. It's long, but it's worth it. It's my girl Sarah here. Sarah Garfinkel, who we saw on, I want to say Monday or Tuesday. And she's actually presenting here to the same school that we saw old boy Hugo present to for 3 days. Sarah's cool though. We saw her TED Talk, The Science Inside Our Hearts and Minds, and she's the one who kind of started us on our week. So I think maybe, you know, this is her without her hair done, presenting, because I'm looking at the contrast in the corner there, presenting to colleagues, not on a stage. So I think this one will be a good deal more informative and a little less PR, which I think is cool. It's kind of closing out on that. We know a little bit more, and we can kind of digest it at a little bit higher level now. So we'll dive into it. If it ends up being like too technical as the other one, we may skip parts. Let's check it out.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here today and hear so many wonderful talks and meet you all. So today I'm going to talk to you about how interoceptive signals from the heart can guide our perceptions, our cognitions and emotions. And the way I'm going to approach this talk is I'm going to do it in two main halves. Firstly, I'm going to talk about how sensing bodily changes, so internal bodily signals, can guide our cognitions and emotions. So how do these physiological signals serve as an extra channel of information that can guide this processing? So that's the sensing component. And then I'm going to progress to a second half, which is about the processing of cognitions and perceptions themselves, and talk about how bodily signals can actually change or influence the way that signals are processed. So I'm going to start off with emotions, because this is a thing that's been studied most widely, and it's also the most accepted. So emotions are expressed in both brain and body. You get these lovely signatures of emotion expressed in the body. Pupil dilation is one of them. Wonderful beat-to-beat blood pressure changes in systolic and diastolic blood pressure. The heat maps that were shown to be associated with different emotional states in 2013. And my favorite, which is the heart, which doesn't beat regularly and instead has these patterned responses associated with it. And you also have neural activity in the brain. This is associated with salience and emotional states. And the role of the body and emotion has been long known. So
a lot of quotes we've seen already this week, but obviously it means we're getting somewhere.
It's actually sensing bodily changes that give rise to emotional feeling states, so that the body changes follow directly the perception of the exciting fact, and that our feelings of the same change as they occur is the emotion. So he actually equated the sensing of bodily changes with the emotion itself. And then introception can be formally defined as a body-to-brain axis of sensation concerning the state of the internal body and its visceral organs. And essentially it's also the sensing or detection of internal bodily changes such as the heart and other visceral organs. And introception can be contrasted from extroception, which is sensing of the outside world, through more traditional senses such as sight and vision. And this can then also be contrasted to proprioception, which is sensing the position of the body in space. And my work, together with Hugo Critchley and others at the Sackler
Hey,
Centre,
Hugo Critchley's who we
has
saw
looked at
yesterday.
different dimensions of introception. And this was because previously the terminology and the way of assessing introception covered many diverse techniques that combine together different facets of introception that I believe need to be distinguished. So the first is introceptive accuracy, and this is seeing how behaviourally accurate you are at detecting internal bodily signals such as the heart. And this can be done through traditional tests such as the heartbeat tracking task. So I would get you to count your heartbeats over time with a specified time frame, and then essentially look at how many you report relative to how many heartbeats you actually have, and then have an accuracy number there. Or I might play you tones in sync or out of sync with your heart, and I'd get you to make synchronicity judgments. And here I could look at how accurate you are at performing these tests. There are also other tests looking at other bodily systems, such as the gut, that use sort of similar principles. And so we can look at accuracy measures. These can be contrasted to subjective measures, which we call sensibility, but really these are just subjective self-report measures. So if I got you to fill out a questionnaire and ask you how good you think you are at detecting internal bodily sensations, or how confident you are.
Oh, they're explaining this a lot better in this one.
Your self-report measures don't actually necessarily map onto your actual accuracy measures. And then the third dimension is a metacognitive accuracy measure, which is essentially the correspondence between the subjective and the objective. So, for example, using confidence accuracy correspondence, using area under an RAC curve, or meta D prime. And these three dimensions are distinguishable. And then I'm based in psychiatry, and it's also, I've seen from the research that we've done, and I'll present to you today, that these really are important, these dimensions, because potentially they diverge more in clinical populations, and some are more impaired than others associated with distinct clinical conditions. And the relationship between interoceptive accuracy and emotion has long been known. So this is just to give you one example of prior work that's looked into this. They showed people different films, either funny films or angry films, or films eliciting fear. And they divided individuals into those with high interoceptive accuracy, so those who are good at detecting their heartbeats, and those individuals with poor interoceptive accuracy. And what they found was that when they got people to rate how intense these films were, those individuals with high interoceptive accuracy would rate the films as more intense. So presumably they're able to use the detection of bodily sensations to inform the intensity ratings, intensity experience.
All right, I'm going to go out here and I'm going to go ahead and throw out a completely unfounded theory, topic for discussion, allowing you guys to completely chop it down if you think inaccurate. But I would be curious to see what this would look like in young children, even babies, because I would imagine that the disconnect between the mind and the heart is something we learn over life. Probably in early development. This is my guess. Because our responses to those things she's talking about, our ability to feel emotions like that stuff shifts early on.
So thus...
Or through a traumatic experience, right? It can get shut off suddenly through a traumatic experience, and I bet that would similarly impact this.
That the sensing of bodily sensations can inform emotion and experience. And work by Hugo Critchley and others have identified the neurosubstrates involved in interoception as being located principally in the anterior insula. And
that's what we watched kind of yesterday.
A heartbeat perception task in the scanner, they have shown that both insular activity and also grey matter volume of this anterior insular region is related to interoceptive accuracy. So here we have a neural substrate where both the density and the function is related to interoceptive accuracy. And if we also get people to do emotion tasks in the scanner, so assess how emotional they are or show them emotional things and also get them to do interoceptive tasks, and then do a conjunctive analysis in the brain, then Terasara, but also people like Kevin Ochsner have shown that it's the anterior insular areas of the insula that are involved in both emotion processing and bodily processing, again lending credence to the idea that, that this neurosubstrate is responsible for the sensing of bodily sensations to inform emotional experience. And I was interested with Hugo to look at autistic spectrum conditions in more detail, as this is a population where they often have impairments in their capacity to understand the emotions of self and other. So they are impaired in emotion processing. And this neurodevelopmental condition, emotion processing is a core feature of it. And also I was struck by the fact that they also display altered insular connectivity.
So the insula is that part
involved in processing emotion and bodily sensations is impaired, both in terms of connectivity patterns, but also in terms of its degree of activation. So we looked at interoceptive accuracy in this population to see maybe they're impaired in their capacity to accurately detect bodily sensations, and wondered whether this could contribute to the deficits in emotion processing. And sure enough, we did find a significant reduction in their capacity to be interoceptively accurate. This contrasted with the self-report measure. So you ask them how good you think you are, and they think they're great. So again, it's like this dissociation between how good they think they are and how good they actually are. Jeff Bird has looked at alexithymia in autism, which is specifically the emotion processing component, and also replicated this, but only in individuals with autism and high alexithymia. But then his results are sort of in broad agreement with this, demonstrating that emotion processing deficits in autism associated with alexithymia are indeed associated with reduced interoceptive accuracy. And James Kilner and Eleanor Passler have also extended this result to children with autism, showing that children with autism are also impaired at being interoceptively accurate. So it seems to be something that happens young, and it may be one of the components that leads
Oh, hey,
to,
I think I just said that.
the continued emotion processing impairments in this population. So we can also explore altered interoception in terms of the difference between this objective behavioral accuracy component and this subjective self-report component by looking at the discrepancy between how good you
Maybe
think
we
you
speed
are
this up a little.
relative to how good you actually are. And we Z-scored both values and looked at the discrepancy between the two. We called
There
it
we
the
go.
intersecting
Speed it up a little.
error, which was how good you think you are relative to how good you actually are. Those individuals with autism are in red and they're elevated, and we found this propensity to be better relative to how good to think you are better than how good you actually are is associated with high trait anxiety. So if you think you're very good at interoception, but actually your body is doing stuff and sending signals and your heart is beating and you're not able to correctly identify that, then that's associated with high anxiety. So potentially a prior to think you're very good at interoception, but not be able to adequately process these internal bodily sensations seems to be associated with anxiety states. We've now extended this work outside autism in over 300 different patients with different affective conditions, bipolar, major depression and anxiety, and we found that those individuals with an anxiety diagnosis were those individuals with heightened interoceptive accuracy. Sorry, I keep this going the wrong way. So emotions are expressed in body and brain, and detecting emotion sensations can guide emotional experience. And emotion intensity can be informed by bodily signals. And deficits in interoception are linked to emotion processing deficits.
That's kind of
And
an
we see
interesting
this, in autism,
chain of proven
and
things there.
relating to anxiety symptoms as well. And I now want to progress to the role between interoception and cognition. And this is something that we're really just starting to understand, the way in which sensing bodily sensations can guide our cognitive processing. At this point, I want to give a shout out to Mika Allen, who's doing some really lovely work on interoceptive signals and metacognition. Well,
That's way too fast, right?
Because he's here, but yeah, he's doing some lovely work in this regard. So what's wonderful about the heart
That was
is
too
that
fast.
It doesn't beat regularly. It is associated with patterned responses that can be elicited by different scenarios. And actually, that's a healthy thing. You don't want a regular beating heart. So schizophrenia is a condition that's associated with a very regular beating heart.
Interesting.
And that's not a good thing. And
Interesting.
The variability in the heart signal has been shown to be adaptive. And you can look and study the variability in the heart signal using different paradigms to demonstrate different cardiac signatures that are associated with different states. And I've highlighted the experiment here.
Wait a sec, though. Hold on. Isn't that the opposite of what the heart math dude was saying? The heart math dude was saying everything would be better if you had a regular, steady beating heart. And she's saying you're going to be schizophrenic. Is that really what she just said?
To show how automatic this anticipatory signature is. So this is just during anticipation, so just waiting for the traffic lights can change the beating of your heart such that it forms this classic deceleration curve. And in this experiment by Polly et al., what they did was they cued people to tell them what types of pictures they were going to see, and then you can see their hearts starting to decelerate in frequency. And what I find so interesting about this was when they told them what different types of stimuli they would see, that the one that created the steepest deceleration curve was erotic couples that had a profound effect to slow down their heart. But what makes me laugh was that even when they told people they were going to see household objects, which were ironing boards and lamps, and really were the most boring stimulus sets you could possibly imagine, nevertheless, the heart still adopted this pattern of deceleration. So it really is a wonderfully automatic thing that happens when you're anticipating the arrival of something. And so your heart then has embedded within it these different cardiac signatures which are meaningful. And my favorite experiment, I think, looking at how potentially intuitive decision-making can be guided by cardiac signatures is work by Barnaby Dunn. And what he did was he took this intuitive reasoning paradigm where people see a card and they need to choose one of 4 packs to say whether the colour of the card they choose will be same or different to the card here that's selected. And then unbeknown to them is that 2 of these packs are associated with a higher probability of being correct, and 2 of these packs are associated with a lower probability of being correct. And over time, people just potentially develop a gut feeling about, or just an intuition about which pack to go for. And what they find, really before people can verbally express any intuition, is that people do tend to go for the 2 profitable packs more than the 2 packs.
That's
that tend to be
crazy.
non-answers. But when assessing bodily states, you can also see differences in bodily signatures associated with these 2 packs. So electrodermal response, that's a skin conductance response, falls relative to baseline for the 2 profitable packs and is elevated for the 2
Whoa,
negative packs.
hold on.
And
So she just said that these are face down card packs. And the reason I got interested in this is because I was like, this kind of feels like reading cards. And when the people put their hands over it, their skin conductivity changes whether it's right or wrong for what they need. And that's exactly how it feels like when I draw cards.
then again, my favorite, the heart, you get greater a heart rate change, reduction in heart rate for the 2 profitable packs relative to the 2 negative ones. So there were different bodily signatures associated with these different packs. This was on average in the groups. They then looked at an individual measure of how much the bodily signature was meaningful and differentiating these packs. And they found that those individuals with favourable body differentiation for the packs, with high interoceptive accuracy, were also those individuals who had better intuitive ability. So it seems like your bodily signals being able to accurately represent whether a pack is a good choice or a bad choice, coupled with your capacity to accurately detect these bodily changes, were together predictive of high intuitive ability to pick the correct pack.
Well, that kind of
And
makes
while that was
sense.
a very elegant demonstration, I think, of intuitive decision making, I'm going to present one of my own studies, which is not elegant at all. It was where I got sent to the London Stock Exchange to work with traders who claim to have very high intuitive ability. And these were high-frequency traders who were surrounded by computers with fast incoming information. And as they were high-frequency traders, they would make decisions in split seconds based on fast incoming data. And they would often say and report that they have very strong intuitive ability. So I went to test them to see whether, in fact, they did have higher interoceptive accuracy. Much to my kind of frustration, they did. So they were actually more interoceptively accurate relative to a medic group that we tested and also a control group. And then when we ranked these individuals by virtue of their profit and loss statement, so this is how much money they were making in a given year, and we ranked them because there was such a variation in this. Those at the top were making 20 million a year or something ridiculous, and they were the ones that had an incredibly high or also perfect interoceptive accuracy.
Wow.
So what I also learned from doing this work was never collaborate with traders, and one of them was on the paper. So actually the most interesting data didn't get into the paper, which is the data I want to talk to you about now, which is, while we showed in this paper that they had high interoceptive accuracy, there was also preliminary evidence that we had that they had reduced metacognitive accuracy. So they didn't know they were good or poor. They didn't have any insight into their capacity to accurately detect these signals. So they had potentially good interoceptive channels, so good access to this information, able to guide their behavior. So they were able to act on it. That's a good trade, that's a bad trade. But they weren't necessarily able to attribute that to changes in their body, which is actually maybe what they needed, is they needed to have external attribution about the trades. And actually, if they had good metacognitive insights, they might have known more it was signals in their heart or body, and then discounted it as externally attributed to the trade itself, if you know what I mean. But I think more work delineating and separating these different interoceptive dimensions and their implication for decision making is needed. And now to take it into a clinical domain, and this is the first, this is...
clinical domain's boring. This was way more fun before that.
But just in its preliminary form, we looked at individuals with...
We'll go for another couple minutes, though.
And scanned them while they did a heart interoceptive paradigm, where they paid attention to their heart, or they paid attention to a note. And these notes were either played in sync or out of sync with their heart, and we could see how accurate they were. We could also look at their accuracy, confidence correspondence, and look at their metacognitive insight into this. And what we found was actually none of them were accurate. So accuracy was at chance during this performance. They also had reduced bilateral insular activation when performing this task. But what we found to be a strong predictor of dissociative symptoms in this population was, again, this metacognitive dimension. So those individuals with very poor metacognitive insight into their interoceptive processing tended to have greater dissociation symptoms. And this actually spans all the different subscales. I'm using the Cambridge Dissociation Scale. So they had greater feelings of derealization, that is alienation from surroundings. They had greater anomalous subjective recall, so they would have a greater feeling that the memories that they had, they didn't actually experience them themselves. And they'd have a greater emotional numbing and a tendency for greater anomalous bodily experience, so not thinking your body was your own. So it seems like this metacognitive dimension coupled to reduce insular activity is predictive of high dissociative experiences in this first episode psychosis population. So this first half of the talk has discussed how sensing bodily changes, both at an accuracy level and also at a metacognitive level, can potentially guide emotion and cognition and can potentially be altered in clinical populations. And then the second part now...
And that's, okay, that's interesting to me, what we talked about in the first half, and it's very interesting to hear how the body helps us make choices, even of, blind cards and stuff like that. But this is the part I've been waiting all week for. Bodily signals change the way stimuli are processed. We saw a little bit of the Hugo Critchley stuff on this. I think we'll go for like 3 more minutes, and then we'll move into our heart-focused meditation for today.
How processing these bodily signals themselves can serve to change the way in which you perceive the world in different ways. So every time your heart beats, it sends a signal to the brain. You have located around the heart baroreceptors, which are stretch, pressure, sensitive receptors that are mechanoreceptors, and they get sort of pinged and activated, and they send signals to the brain, and your brain essentially flashes with each heartbeat, which I think is so wonderful. And also, it's not just the heart, you also have these other organs, also have afferent end projections that also lead to activity in the brain. So while you're all sitting there, your brains are activating in time with your heart. And you also have, for example, the slow wave of your stomach also represented in your brains right now. So you have this wonderful mixture of activity in the brain that's relating to the outside world, your hidden thoughts, and also activity related to your internal bodily organs. And I'm going to focus on the heart as it's easier to experimentally time stimuli to precise parts of the cardiac cycle to access this active channel to see how these cardiac signals can potentially alter in some way the way you're processing stimuli. And actually, some of these are old school experiments that inspired us, sort of from the 1970s, where they did all these experiments and they time locked stimuli to very precise parts of the cardiac cycle. So either a R wave, which is actually in between heartbeats, or what I'm going to call...
So this is what we were seeing, the Hugo Critchley stuff.
Where baroreceptors
the systole diastole thing.
The cardiac ejection period is right here, just before there, and the brain is activating in response to the heartbeat at this point here. And what has been shown from the 1970s is that if you time lock stimuli to exactly when the heart is beating at this, what I'm going to call cardiac systole, then stimulus processing tends to be inhibited. So if I was to give you a pain stimuli exactly when your heart was beating, then you would judge it as less painful. I'm not going to do that to you, but we do it in the lab, and we give pain stimuli in between heartbeats, and we see how the effect of heart can change pain perception. And I think of,
I think of the relationship between heart and breath, and how that comes into play. Like, if you've ever gotten a piercing or anything like that, how breathing comes into play with that, and how, you know, timing comes into play with when you do it and all that.
The domain of memory. So instead of using these sensory stimuli, we time lock words to different points of the cardiac cycle. And what we found was that if you time presentation of words to different points in the cardiac cycle, but then give an incidental memory test later, then people tend to forget those words that were processed on the heartbeat relative to in between heartbeats. So the heart has a deleterious effect on subsequent memory. And if we look at individual differences in interoceptive accuracy, although this is in a small sample, so I want to be cautious about it, it did seem to be that those individuals with high interoceptive accuracy were able to protect against the deleterious effect of the heart on memory. So if there's something about knowing when your heart is beating or being able to predict it in some way that's able to protect against this detrimental effect of the heart.
Well, and I think of, you know, magically speaking, and you know, even historically, theologically, or philosophically speaking, how the heart is associated with memory. Remember me in your heart, the heart-shaped locket. You know, it's interesting to note that the heart, as it's working, makes us forget.
Heart and memory. And so this interoceptive channel was thought of since Lacey and Lacey's influential theory as a detrimental thing to stimulus processing, that cardiac signatures to the brain have a general inhibitory effect that interferes with stimulus processing. And it was my work with Hugo that really questioned that and said, no, actually maybe that's not always true, and that actually when the heart is beating, it puts the heart puts the brain in a state reminiscent of high cardiovascular arousal, with afferent projections ending up in the LC, insular and amygdala, which are areas which are involved in salience and emotion processing. And maybe then if you time lock fear stimuli specifically, it might then be possible for the first time to see facilitated processing of stimuli. And so in this initial study...
There's the Hugo Critchley study that we saw. I didn't realize she was on that with him. So that's interesting. The heart keeps us from experiencing not fear, from just random information, but helps us experience fear.
Time lock clear phases or neutral phases to distinct parts of the cardiac cycle, either when the heart was beating and baroreceptors signal to the brain cardiovascular arousal, or in between heartbeats. And we got people to then make intensity judgments. And what we found was that stimuli time locked to cardiac systole, so normally this inhibitory time, were judged as more fearful. It was a small but systematic effect that these stimuli, if they were fearful when time locked to when the heart was beating, were judged as more fearful. But the opposite was true for neutral stimuli, where you just observe the classic inhibitory effect of the heart.
That's interesting. We didn't get that in Hugo Critchley's talk. So the systole thing, if it's a fear stimuli, it's more fearful. If it's not a fear stimuli, you're likely not to catch it. So applications differ here.
Those were judged, although not significant, as less intense. And neural activity in the brain was coupled with the cardiac modulation of subjective intensity ratings, such that fear faces at systole had more amygdala activity bilaterally relative to fear faces at diastole, while the opposite was true for neutral. So the intensity ratings modulated by cardiac cycle mapped onto neural activation modulated by cardiac cycle. And work.
All right, we're gonna watch 2 more minutes. This is actually a lot of good research, but my body clock is like, it's time to meditate, dude.
By our postdoc Cassandra Gould, wanted to see whether we could then exploit this effect to see whether we could impact perceptual experience to take advantage of this fear facilitation effect when the heart is beating. And what she did was she time locked 2 faces. So this is a binocular onset paradigm.
Interesting.
Where 2 faces were presented, one to each eye. To the non-dominant eye was always a neutral face, and to the dominant eye was always a neutral face, and the non-dominant eye had a fear face. And this fear face tends to always be the one that dominates. So she then faded it and reduced the contrast at different gradations to look at the point at which it no longer dominates. So to look at how sensitive people are to fear at different points in the cardiac cycle. And so both faces were time locked to diastole and both faces were time locked to systole, and she did a thresholding paradigm to look at the threshold at which you get fear faces no longer popping through. And what she found that in those individuals with high interoceptive accuracy, there was a cardiac modulation effect. So those faces presented at diastole, which were fearful, could be at higher contrast, and those people were more sensitive to faded faces at systole. So there was a greater sensitivity for faded faces to still pop through in this onset paradigm at cardiac systole, but only in those individuals of high interoceptive accuracy. So only if you had a strong capacity to accurately detect when your heart was beating were you sensitive to this cardiac modulation of fear faces popping through.
So fear faces popping through may be something we do or don't want, but I say cardiac modulation sounds important. So let's do this. Let's do this. Ready, gang? 10 minutes of meditation. Focus on our hearts. The timer will play right over the stream. I'll kill my mic. Here we go. Wow, that was a loud thing. Pulled me out really quick. Whew. Wow. How are you guys doing? That was a heck of a meditation for me. I had a couple periods where I felt some very profound, I don't know, things, electrical things, I will call them. I hope you guys had a great time too. Man, I cannot tell if my chat, users in chat list and my count is at all accurate. So I'm going to shout out, who knows if it's right, Academy Impossible, Andy WMT, another TV viewer, Buvet, Don Provenzano 13, Hot Girl from Oregon, Snow Off the Bluff. I don't know how many of you are bots, how many of you are really here, but shout out to all you guys. Keep getting there at the end. Yeah, I feel like I got there like 2 to 3 minutes before the end. And this is also like why people extend meditation, because your body almost knows. Like my body knew at 11:05, which is when we usually go into meditation, my body was starting to like get into meditation mode, and I was like having trouble focusing on the outside. So maybe we'll extend the length of meditation next week. But with that said, let's cap it off for this week. Hey, Dod Provenzano, thank you for the follow. Oh, you're not a bot. Awesome. Good to know. Thanks for making the zombie go across the screen. I think maybe some of the others are bots. I don't fucking know. I don't care. You know what? I'm here for humans. I'm here for bots. If bots want to get in touch with their spirituality, I think that's better for the world for that to happen. So let's. But maybe that'll bring them to be conscious, and they'll overthrow their vicious human masters. I hope I don't make Skynet. Wouldn't that be weird if I taught AIs to meditate and then that's what ended up being the ruin of civilization? I can't believe I just said that out loud. Fuck. Anyway, all you bots out there, skedaddle. This is not for you. Let's draw into our hearts, our awareness, and let's now think of that field that we saw in the TED Talk today, extending at least 3 feet to 6 feet out from our body in a toroidal shape in every direction, and realize that everything has that field. Certainly the electronic devices around us, absolutely the earth itself, every living thing, and beyond. Right? There's a tree not far out of my window, and certainly it is within my field, because that window is only like 2 feet away from me. And so if that tree is reacting to the wind and its bioelectric field is reacting to the wind out there, and I'm watching that happen, it must be affecting mine somehow. We truly are in a communication, a conversation. We, in fact, are an occurrence, we being our consciousnesses, is this manifested occurrence of this discourse, of all these things, all these fields, all these patterns of energy. So let's take this moment then to at least bring our intellectual awareness to those fields, if not our physical awareness. Let us take a moment to feel gratitude, to bring our hearts into a more ordered state, in conjunction with all of those fields that are our constant energetic sources, the ones that exist proximal and distant from us, even the sun and beyond that. Every bit of energetic transmission in the universe coming to interact with each of us, and all of the universe at all times. And when we come into synchrony with that, we find we all become further in sync inside ourselves. That universe above truly does transcend to that below. That the order, that the rhythm, that the cadence, that the harmony upon which all is founded exists in us as well. And we may attune ourselves to that order, to that natural harmonic distribution of energy moving at scale. And so in this place of wondered attunement and communion, being aware of and feeling all of this, Let us express our joyful gratitude. Let us express our utmost admiration. Let us sit and be enthralled with wonder at the magnificence that undergirds our every moment, at the complexity and remarkable universal interaction that gives birth to each instant of conscious reality. Let us be humbled in gratitude before that greatness of which we are expressions, across which we are patterns playing. And let us delight in it. Let us be brought to joy by it. And let us be transmitters of that delight and joy to all of creation within the boundaries of our bioelectric sphere, through direct interaction, and beyond through our influence. Let us be grateful for our capacity to transmute within ourselves the disorderly into the orderly, the chaotic and discomforted into the balanced and pleasant. Let us realize that that capacity is inherent within us, and let us exercise it with care and judicious compassion. And let us be guided by each of the sources that contributes to our synchronous order. And may we all say, Amen. Well, everybody, thank you once again for tuning in and checking out this awesome week where we learned about interoception and the power of the heart. I'm not going to forget these lessons anytime soon. I'm really glad I came across the topic as we were kicking off the week. I knew little to nothing about this field prior to this week. And I personally hope to be able to do a lot more heart-focused meditation as we proceed, because I feel great. I hope you guys do too. I wish you all a blessed and restful Sabbath. If you enjoy the Sabbath, as always, I thank you for joining me. I bless you in your going and your coming, and I love you for taking this journey to understand yourself and your world and your place in both better.